Welcome to the Dollars and Hops podcast, where we help you optimize your financial future. Here are your hosts, Scott and Lance.
Welcome to the Dollars and Hops podcast. We are excited to have you back with us here in our second episode that we've ever recorded. This episode talking about the dreaded and beloved monthly budget. I have my co-host Scott here with me for this episode. Scott, how are things going up there in Maryland?
Things are going well. We are definitely excited and also terrified of this episode. This is the dreaded monthly budget episode that is definitely necessary and we definitely think will help you. But it's something that no one likes to talk about. So I think it'll be a fun episode to go through and we can kind of share our experiences on things that have worked for us and give you some different ideas on what helps us budget and kind of go from there. Lance, what are you sipping on tonight?
Yeah, so as a reminder for our listeners out there, we do have the hops section, the hops showdown part of our show that we are excited about. Let's see, this week, tonight, I am sipping on the Holy City Brewing IPA, Holy City Brewing being out of North Charleston, here right around the corner. It's a beautiful area up there near Park Circle. And this is the overly friendly IPA. Love the can art also. We'll have that up on our Instagram. Go ahead and check us out at Dollars and Hops on the Insta. And I'm excited to dig into this IPA, one of my favorite types of beers. How about you, Scott?
Awesome. I'll be sipping on a Jockey's Juice beer. This is from Inverness Brewery out of Monkton, Maryland. It's a hazy session IPA. I've been out there with my wife and my son. They have a real nice farm out there and a big open field, nice tap room. So I encourage you to check it out if you're local or if you're ever in the Maryland area.
Right on. So we have a new section of the show we're going to be introducing this week, and it's where we just take a look at some of the headlines that are out there in our world regarding that have to do with personal finance, spending, saving, investing, anything like that that catches our attention that we think is worthy of discussion. We're going to go ahead and snag it. We're not going to be afraid, and we're going to discuss it right here on the show. And so this week, I think, Scott, you pulled out a pretty awesome article we're going to discuss, right?
Yeah, certainly. So this article is from CNBC, and it's the headline is U.S. savings rate hits 33% as coronavirus causes Americans to stockpile cash and curb spending. So that kind of it was a little surprising to me to see that. I mean, surprising in a way. We never see the savings rate hit 30%. Usually the savings rate is usually, between 5 and 10% for most Americans. Usually it kind of stays in the 7% range or so. So obviously with the pandemic, people, there's a whole lot less discretionary spending going on right now. And, I think things are starting to pick up, but I think that this episode will kind of plays nicely with this article as far as, people have a lot of extra money because they're not spending as much money on discretionary things. We're obviously going to be talking about budgeting, but as far as having a 33% savings rate, I mean, it begs the question, of course, like, what are you doing with that money? And we're going to get into those sorts of topics in future episodes about, what you should be doing with that money or what you should be thinking about doing with that money based upon your goals and objectives and things like that. But I thought it was interesting. I went and I pulled the savings rate kind of by month, and it looks like it spiked at about 33% back in April. It's kind of tailed off, but we're still over 15% currently. So in July, the savings rate was 17%. So it just goes to show that we have probably a little bit more room in our budget than we might think we do. So that kind of plays well with what we're going to talk about today. But I mean, I was pretty shocked at the number, the 33% for sure.
Yeah, we're definitely going to link this article in the show notes. So go ahead and check it out for yourself. But I think it says in the article that 17% was the previous historic high in the United States of America for savings rate. And we're talking about 33% in April of this year, obviously with the COVID-19 pandemic being in the forefronts of Americans' minds. And I mean, that's nearly double the savings rate. So that just goes to show you, just like Scott said, that when push comes to shove, when there's fear, when there's really a need to dig deep, that we as Americans know how to cut out of our budget. So I'm excited to kind of dig into the idea of budgeting this episode and go deeper into it. But yeah, this was an eye opener of an article for me.
Yeah, certainly. So I guess that brings us to the kind of the main topic that we're going to be discussing today, and that is budgeting, the beloved and often hated budgeting episode. And we're going to go through how we budget personally. Lance and I are extremely different when it comes to this. So what works for one doesn't necessarily work for the other, but I think it'll be cool to kind of share our ideas around this. And I think that to start things off, I mean, the idea of budgeting is extremely important just to understand where your spending is going and how much you're saving towards your goals. So I think you need to look at things from a holistic standpoint and kind of identify what your goals are. And we'll have future episodes about how to set goals and that sort of thing. But when it comes to budgeting, I mean, it's important to know where your money is going because I think a lot of people don't know where it's going. If nothing else, I mean, if you're not a budgeter every single month, I mean, I think it would be helpful at least to do it for a couple months straight to get an idea of kind of how you're doing in different spending categories. So we actually have a tool that we've created to be posted on the show notes on dollarsandhops.com. It's a Google spreadsheet. We love using Google spreadsheets. This is
if you didn't tell already. If you didn't tell that we love Google spreadsheets, we love Google spreadsheets.
If you couldn't tell from episode 1, we do love our Google spreadsheets. So
there will be lots of Google spreadsheets in this show, but we promise not to talk too much about spreadsheets now.
Certainly. So, I think it's important to kind of like start at the top and really just like go through your spending. There's different ways that you can do this. I mean, you can do this manually. You can use a tool to do it. So you could use like a mint.com or Personal Capital or a YNAB. There's all sorts of different tools that you can use. Some of those are paid and some of those are free. But I think for most people, just tracking your spending for 1 to 2 months at the very least, or every month, will kind of be a little bit eye-opening in certain categories. So
absolutely. And I think along with that, Scott, I think that for me, that digs right to the core of why it's such a love-hate relationship, right, with the monthly budget. It's such a love-hate because I love to see when all my expenses are laid out and where my money is actually going. There, it gives you a piece to know what's coming in, what's planned to come in, and where it's all going to go. And then there's a plan written down on paper, on a Google sheet somewhere where I can say, yes, everything's covered, everything has a plan, I'm good to go. That gives me peace. I love that. What I don't love, my personality, and we all have different personalities, but I am not a planner. I don't like to plan. I don't like to sit down and plan. I like to just go do it. I like to go get it done. Let's just experiment. Let's see how it goes. And so budgeting goes against my very nature, and it's something I've had to work on over the years, but I have seen the fruits of it. And I do think it is a crucial tenet to personal finance.
And I'm the exact opposite. I am a planner. I'm the type of guy that goes and gets 3 quotes from every single contractor that ever comes to my house to do anything. I overanalyze every single thing that I do. That being said, I'm not like in general, like I like to know where my money's going, but like Lance is definitely more of a budgeter than me. That being said, I think that I could probably take a page or two out of his book as far as how deliberate he is with this. And I think it doesn't come naturally to him, but I think that, he tracks things a little bit better than I do from month to month for sure.
Yeah. So y'all might have noticed at the end of our first episode, we had our tagline, right, that we featured, which is live and give on less than you make and invest the difference. This is a principle that's core to our show. It's core to our money philosophy. It's core to how we think about our investments, our net worth, our financial goals. If you could boil it down and sum it up into one principle or one sentence, this would kind of be it. And it's not fully encompassing, but it does a pretty good job. And what we're really saying is this is really core to the budget, right? Because you can only spend and give what you have coming in. And hopefully, if we plan well, you have some left over, and we are going to have a plan for that money for our future. And Scott's going to talk about some of that as well. But I kind of want to jump off of that and right into the discussion around the process of budgeting, right? And so on our budget template, our free tool that we have on our Google Drive that we are going to link to in the show notes, definitely go check it out. It's very simple. It's very simple. It's meant as a template to catch all the different categories in the income and the expense, the in-go and out-go categories of money, and to make sure you don't forget anything, because we have to account for every dollar coming in the upcoming month. So it's near the end of September 2020 right now. And we would be looking at October 2020 to say, okay, here's what I'm anticipating coming in. I know what my paycheck typically looks like. I know what my income is going to be, my fixed salary if I have a sales job, maybe some extra commission, maybe some bonus money I was expecting, maybe some rental income if you have a rental property, maybe whatever kind of income you can foresee. Let's plan for it. Let's have a plan for it. So that's the idea with documenting your income on the top section. And then we're going to document all of our expenses. And so this is where it is easy to forget. And if you're like me, it's easy to just spend freely.
Or me.
Scott as well. So I think most of us listening to this probably have this issue. But we start with the category of giving. So we believe giving is core to healthy personal finance. And so we have some giving categories. It is not limited to those categories, and it is not mandatory for those categories. But these are the categories we just put in our template and just random amounts. And we have the housing category. So your mortgage, your utilities, electricity, water, internet, count that in your housing, and then any sort of cable or streaming stuff you might have. And then on to the transportation. So that's going to include your car payment, gas, all these different categories to think of. We're not going to go through all of them right now, but the idea is that anytime you're spending money, and this is where I really grew in budgeting, was documenting every transaction for a month as an experiment. Okay. So not thinking to myself, like, I have to be tied to this budget for the rest of my life. I think that could be helpful for some people, but probably not realistic.
Yeah, I think that's smart. I think it's like, you don't like, this is, treat this as like an exercise. I mean, you don't have to necessarily do this every month. Maybe you want to do it every other month. Maybe you want to do it every quarter. Something like that is definitely going to be helpful. And I think just doing the exercise at least once will be eye-opening for at least one or two of these categories. You might look and say,
"Oh man, for sure!
Wow, I spent $300 at the Starbucks this month. Maybe it's time to."
Yes.
And I think Starbucks always gets beat up on the budgeting episode.
I mean, not me, but pumpkin spice lattes. I do spend money on pumpkin spice lattes. I will
say it's fall. I tend to, go to Dunkin' Donuts maybe more than my fair share to get the pumpkin spice coffee. And I think all of us are in on those seasonal things. But I do think if you challenge yourself to do this at least once, you will see a category or two, or maybe three, or maybe four that you could possibly improve. And, set goals for yourself. There's a planned column here on what you are planning on spending. And then what you actually, once you've seen your actual expenses for a month, make a plan. Put a plan. Say, okay, I spent $600 here. Maybe that's okay. Maybe that's not okay. Maybe I want to try to spend $400. The goal of this, obviously, is to take a look at your income, make sure that your expenses are lower than your income, and that you have something dropping to the bottom here, a leftover column. And that's our whole philosophy here is live and give on less than you make, invest the difference. So at the bottom of this spreadsheet, you obviously want to have a difference between what your income is and what your expenses are. And one thing to keep in mind is your income probably isn't going to remain the same for your entire career. Most likely it will go up over time. So this is a starting point, but try to think of the expenses as, almost as like a business. Like if you're running a business, you want to keep your expenses as low as possible so you have as much profit as possible. If you have profit in your monthly budget, oh, well, guess what? You get to either save that or you get to invest it. And that's how you grow your net worth and become financially free over time.
Man, that is well said. And that is getting me excited about my budget, Scott. You are inspiring me right now. Absolutely. No, I think you made a lot of great points. I think there's a great app that I use for tracking every expense during the month. Again, I kind of like to get granular on this. So it's called Debit Credit, which is a free app on wherever you can download apps on your smart device. It is in-app purchases if you want to link it up with your bank account. But honestly, I just use it like buckets. And so only a couple of the variable categories, such as groceries, eating out, gasoline, those are really the big ones. And then, of course, formula and diapers. If you know me, I have 4 kids under 4. It's crazy. And I have to document formula and diapers a lot. But on the variable categories, and just focusing and drilling down on those for the month, you can really just tell yourself, every time I spend money in one of these categories, I'm going to document it just to figure out what we are actually spending on groceries, on eating out. And I think, like Scott said, it can be really eye-opening and then motivating to be like, we're spending too much money on eating out, too much takeout, too much restaurants, too much grabbing lunch on the road or lunch at work instead of just packing my lunch, and how that could actually affect my monthly budget and eventually my net worth, right? And our financial goals, and impact that long-term over time.
Certainly. And I think one of the things that frustrates people to death over a budget is some of the unexpected things. So everybody's got a plan until they get punched in the face, right? There's a famous boxer that said that, right? So what I've done in my personal budget is, some of these things that we have on this spreadsheet are, like car maintenance, maybe insurance. Some of these things are not monthly expenses. You might pay them once a year. You might pay for it once a quarter. Sometimes you have no idea when it's going to come up. And I think a lot of times people have this, their budget, and those unexpected things throw their budget completely off. One of the things that's worked for me is I have an online savings account. I recommend like either a Capital One 360 or like an Ally Bank. What it allows you to do is it allows you to create different savings accounts under one kind of login. So for me personally, I have a category for Christmas. Guess what? Every single year, Christmas is going to happen. It shouldn't be an unexpected expense. I basically take the amount of money that I want to spend for Christmas, I divide it by 52, and I have a recurring transfer that comes in to my online savings account for Christmas savings. That sounds crazy, but it works. If you're spending,
that does sound crazy.
It sort of does. So I do that for all sorts of different expenses. I do it for Christmas. I do it for car repairs. I do it for insurance. I also do it for house repairs. We all have different things that are going to pop up in our lives that are kind of unexpected, that throw our budgets off. And I think it's extremely important to try to get that money out of your checking account where you're like seeing it all the time, because it's just one of those things that, like, if you see it and it's in your checking account, you just think that it's there to be spent when maybe it should be saved for something else. So that's just something.
So that's kind of like, I guess if I could reframe that just so I understand, because this is something I don't do, and I actually admire you in the way that you plan for this. I think it's pretty cool. So by putting it into this savings account and these different buckets within your online savings account, you're kind of giving those dollars like a very specific purpose.
Exactly. So I literally will take let's just take car repairs for an example. Let's just say I budget $1,200 a year for car repairs. Obviously, those car repairs aren't going to happen every single week. They're going to happen all sorts of different times during the year. So let's just say $1,200 a year for car repairs. I break that down to a weekly amount, probably right around, if there's 4 weeks in a month, we're probably looking at about $25 a week. So there's a recurring transfer that happens in Ally right to my checking account. It takes out the $25 every single week on the same day of the week. It just happens. And then whenever I have a car repair, I just pay myself back.
Yeah.
It's as simple as that. And that way it doesn't
That's cool.
break my budget. Those unforeseen things are not really unforeseen. They're just, you didn't plan for them. So I think this is a good way to kind of plan for them.
Man, that's cool. I learned something today. So you use Allied Online Bank, is that right?
Yeah, ALLY, Ally Bank. And then I also recommend Capital One 360. They kind of had the same sort of setup. I think it's important to do it on on a website where you can have like multiple accounts and kind of see it all in the same kind of web page, web portal. So I can kind of see, I have like 10 savings accounts with Ally for all different sorts of savings goals. And they're all just right on one website. So it's very easy to see kind of, what each account looks like and what transfers I have pending and all of that stuff.
That is awesome, Scott. Thank you for sharing that with me and with our listeners. I think with that kind of wraps up our budgeting conversation, but I think it was a good introduction to how we think about budgeting and how we can all probably improve how we budget. But again, just a recap of a couple of the tools that we mentioned that we will link to in the show notes that we think could be beneficial. First of all, our free tool. We like free. The free Dollars and Hops dreaded and beloved monthly budget tool, a Google Sheet, will be available to you just as a template. Track every expense on your own in a Google Excel spreadsheet. That's the cheapest way to do it. I recommend trying to do it that way. If you want to try a debit and credit app, I also use that. It's a free app with in-app purchases, so I'm not sure how they charge for that. There might be a cost. And then Scott, there's some other tools available as well.
Yeah, I mean, you can always use Mint. Mint.com has a budgeting tool, and Personal Capital also has a budgeting tool. I would say try out, if one isn't working for you, I would definitely try out another. There's multiple different resources out there, and you can just do a quick search of the internet and find something that works for you. I would, of course, try free before I tried paid, but
we are frugal though. And we celebrate frugality on this podcast. It's important to say that.
We certainly do. We certainly do.
We don't make fun of it. We embrace it. We celebrate it. It's all good. So any sort of frugal.
At the end of the day, I want to see that leftover at the very bottom of the budget spreadsheet. I want to see a green positive number at the bottom.
Amen.
So that I can put some money to work for myself so that I don't have to work as long.
That's right. That's right. If you're cutting out a budgeting expense for your monthly budget, you are helping your monthly budget, right? Is that fair to say?
Yes, exactly. Oh, very, very fair.
Great. So the next section of our show we want to introduce to y'all is questions that need answers. So last week we asked you guys, our listeners, to send us questions at dollarsandhops.com email address. It's on the website. It's in the show notes. Send us a question if you have a question. We will address it on the show, and this is us fulfilling that promise. So right now we have our first question, and I think this is from an anonymous listener. So we will also keep listener information anonymous if you choose to. And I'm going to ask this question, and then we're going to kind of take a look at it together. When saving for retirement, Dave Ramsey suggests putting 15% of your salary into a 401k or other tax-efficient retirement vehicle. Would you recommend this practice? I think this is a good practice. However, the issue I see with it is this assumes you will retire at the age of 59 and a half. If I wish to retire younger than 59 and a half, should I be putting less money into my 401k and investing it elsewhere? Scott, you want to take a crack at this?
Yeah, so that's a very good question. I think to start, obviously, 15% is not a bad rule of thumb. I think it all depends on your personal goals and objectives. I think the listener's question is kind of insinuating that he plans on maybe retiring before retirement age. So he's kind of looking at this as like, okay, well, if I put all my money in the 401k, am I going to be able to actually use that in early retirement, which is a good problem to have. So our anonymous listener must be doing pretty well with their money. So I'll start off by saying that. Or at least they plan on doing pretty well with their money because they plan on retiring early, which is awesome.
Nice work.
So I would say that especially when there is a match at your employer, it's incredibly important to get that match. That is free money that you should be taking advantage of. It should be one of the most important things as far as if you even want to call it a spending category. It would probably be one of the more important spending categories in the fact that you're getting free money in putting money into that 401k. So that would probably be my initial thing. But I would say that if you want to retire early, you're definitely going to need a bucket of money that you can use in retirement
before
59. A bridge account.
A bridge account.
Lance and I might have been talking about a bridge account maybe before we started recording. A bridge account can be a brokerage account, and that's probably what we would recommend, that you have some sort of bucket of money that you can draw on that is it's not a tax advantaged account. It's a post-tax pile of money. So yes, we would definitely recommend having a post-tax pile of money within a brokerage account to draw on before you get to 59 and a half. That being said, I will say that there are incredible advantages to saving as much money as you possibly can in your 401k. And that is really from a tax savings perspective. So if you are putting, let's say you make $80,000 a year and you put $10,000 into your 401k, well, you've just lowered your taxable income by $10,000. So you're paying less tax on because you're contributing to your 401k. And I do think that is important. It allows you to grow your net worth faster. A 401k is incredibly important to save in, but I would say that you would probably want to, in most cases, for most people, you would want to max out your 401k before you even contributed to a brokerage account. What do you think, Lance?
Yes, Scott, I like your answer a lot. It makes me think. I think this is a great question. I think it's an advanced question for sure, because as you point out, this listener is trying to retire early, which I think is an awesome goal. And when we say retire early on this show, we're not talking about stopping working early and doing nothing and kicking up on the couch and watching Netflix all day. We're talking about work becomes
we're not?
optional. No, we're not. No, we are absolutely not. We are talking about work becomes optional, and then your time gets to be spent how you would want to spend it with your family, in your community, however you choose to spend it. That would be retiring early, the way I think about it, at least. So I empathize with this question. I like the idea of starting to build up a brokerage account, even though it's a post-tax account, because honestly, the long-term capital gains tax rates are favorable in the long run. But I think Scott makes a great point. I agree. I think maxing out 401k first, that money is tax-free initially, and then it gets taxed when you pull it out after you're 59 and a half. But if you really are intent and you have a goal to retire early, you do need to start investing simultaneously in a bridge account, which can be done through some of the providers we recommend. We recommend Schwab, Fidelity, or Vanguard.
I think with that, let's go to the second question, and I'll get your thoughts, Lance. With the goal of retiring early and knowing each penny saved can go towards that goal, how do you create a balanced budget that allows you to enjoy the time between now and retirement? What are some tips or rules of thumb we could implement? I think this is a good question for the episode that we have right now with the budget.
Yeah. I love this question. I think the first thing to remember and realize when you're creating your budget is that you are the one creating your budget. We really believe that living and giving on less than you make is, first of all, most important when creating a budget. So enjoying the time between now and retirement, I think, was the question. If your income doesn't allow you to enjoy it, then we need to get your income up, because you're not ready to enjoy it the way you need to enjoy it between now and retirement. So I think it is a balance for everybody, and for everybody that looks differently. But some tips would be just to some basic rules of thumb would be, hey, you're in control of your budget. And so I think sometimes, especially in the retire early conversation, there's lots of great podcasts and information out there on retire early. I think some people can become, this might be a strong of a word, but obsessed with retiring early. And so they forego the enjoyment of the money, the giving of the money, and actually spending time doing what they enjoy doing or with their family, right? So I think it's really important to make sure you're accounting for those things in your budget. I think this is a great question.
Yeah, I 100% agree. So I think that part of your budget is allowing for the things that allow you to enjoy your time. So if you're finding that you're spending way too much money on coffee and you need to spend more time on entertainment with the family, put that into your budget. The other thing is this is, you can't take it with you when you die, right? So you can't take yourself too seriously. You need to have fun along the way. I mean, that's what it's all about. You don't want to forego gratification 100% of the time just to stick money into a retirement account, which who knows if you're even going to be able to utilize it. We like to think that you will, but it kind of goes back to the fact of like, if you get a bonus at work, you get, an unexpected pay raise, take a portion of that money, have fun with it.
Yeah, definitely.
Have fun. Do something that you wouldn't normally do with a part of that money, as like a one-time expense. And there's nothing wrong with doing that. I think it's extremely important. Some people get so caught up in where every single dollar goes that they kind of miss the smell the roses moment. It's
right.
like they're not smelling the roses every day because they're so wrapped up in their personal finances and where every single dollar is going. So that's what I would say. I would say, those small victories that you have, I would say, hey, budget for the fun times, but those small victories that you do have in your career, make sure that you take a little bit of money and spend it on yourself and your family and get some of those experiences.
Yeah, that definitely reminds me when I beat you in fantasy football and I took a portion of the winnings to buy a pair of boots that I really liked and wanted. It reminds me of that, and it was great.
Lance, did you really?
I still have those boots. They're great. They're wonderful boots.
I hope we can cut this segment of the podcast out, but. Yeah, I think Lance has won what? We started in 17 years ago playing fantasy football together. But I have one championship. There's only 10 people in the league, so I'm definitely batting under average, I guess you could say. And I think Lance is batting way ahead of his skill level for sure.
Let's go ahead and move to the Hops Showdown portion of the podcast. So Scott, why don't you go ahead and break it down with your score since I went first last week?
Certainly. So this, again, I was drinking a Jockey's Juice Hazy Session IPA from Inverness Brewery out of Monkton, Maryland. This was a absolutely fantastic beer. I would definitely recommend it. Hazy Session, not a beer I would probably normally get, but that being said, I'm glad I did. I would give it a very, very high score of a 95. I think it was awesome, and I would definitely recommend it.
Wow. Amazing. So again, I had the Holy City Brewing Overly Friendly IPA for the friendliest city in South Carolina. Charleston, South Carolina. That is the name of the beer. It actually was a great IPA, and I'm pretty tough on IPAs. I really enjoy IPAs. My favorite type of beer. This was crisp. It was piney. It was very balanced, I think is a good word I would use for it. So very crisp and balanced. But it will not be getting a 95. I think I have to go with a 91, but I did love it. 91's a very high score. 91 for the Overly Friendly IPA. Not so friendly score. Sorry.
All right. And with that, before we head out here, definitely wanted to talk about the action step as we leave. I think we just all need to answer the question, do you have a budget? We have obviously a free tool on dollarsandhops.com that you can download, the Google Sheet. But I think it's important for everybody to at least go through the exercise of budgeting for a couple of months. Get an idea of where your spending is. Take a look at how that spending compares to your income and make sure that the number that's dropping to the bottom, what's left over, is what you need it to be. Does that help you meet your goals and objectives at the end of the day? And we would encourage you to either use, our spreadsheet, maybe use one of the free tools that we mentioned throughout the show, like mint.com or Personal Capital, something like that. Definitely go through the exercise of budgeting for at least 1 or 2 months, if not on a monthly basis. We think it's extremely important.
This is Lance.
This is Scott.
Live and give on less than you make and invest the difference. Dollars and Hops out.
You have been listening to the Dollars and Hops podcast. Optimizing your financial future starts with taking action today. Got a question? Shoot us an email at questions@dollarsandhops.com, and the guys will tackle it on a future episode. Visit our website, dollarsandhops.com, for show notes and the craft brew lineup for each episode. And please leave us a review on Apple Podcasts or Stitcher. Thanks for listening.